I suppose the first thing I wanted to ask you was when you read the script of Brooklyn, did you know it was being sent to you? So were you excited that it was coming your way, or did you just read it completely cold?
I guess it was a bit of both. I mean, I was aware of the story. So I had read the book when I was maybe about 16, I think, and I loved it. But at the time, didn't know that there was going to be a screenplay or
And when you read the book, did
like
you
that.
subconsciously in any way put yourself in those scenes? Even looking back on it?
I think you always do. Do you not feel like you do that with books? I always feel like if it really grabs me, I start to act out imaginary scenes that maybe aren't in the book.
Yeah, I'll find myself sometimes saying little pieces of dialogue.
Yeah.
Sometimes
on
doing
your
that.
own.
Although I did read The Reader a long time before I was actually cast in the film, and I remember when I read it, sitting down and having a conversation with somebody else about who could possibly play Hannah Schmitz, and I never thought of myself.
Really?
Never.
Why
no.
do you think that was?
I think maybe because I was probably in my late 20s at the time that I had read the novel, and then when I came to shoot the film I was about 34 or something like that, 33, 34, and the jump between sort of 26, 27 to 33 is actually
huge.
fairly substantial.
Yeah.
And so I think that was probably why I just never pictured myself doing it. But did you love the script of Brooklyn when you first got it, straight away?
Yeah, I loved it straight away. I think I connected with it straight away because my mum and dad had made that journey in the 80s. So they went over to New York. They worked there for, 10, 11 years. They had me there in the Bronx and got married in City Hall, in the registry office, had dinner that night, went back to work the next day. Like that's a story that I've grown up with. So initially that was kind of the connection for me. But then by the time we actually made it, again, kind of what you're saying, how you can kind of grow into a part, about a year or so had passed. And in that time I moved to London. And I was homesick. I was really homesick and I really missed being Irish in Ireland. And I think to go in, I don't know if you've ever had this before, but to go into a film where emotionally you're sort of in the same state as your character, it's terrifying because there's nowhere to hide.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. I wanted to say, in preparing for the role, I imagined that actually that process must have been very difficult, because I'm sure on the one hand I can imagine you doing almost nothing at all, and yet at the same time having to simply think a lot about your mother, your auntie, your grandmother, and also how your own relationship, I'm sure, has evolved with your mother, because between the ages of 16 and 21 a lot shifts in that dynamic, I think.
It does. I think it can be one of the most complicated relationships sometimes. I mean, really, for myself and my mum, we've always been sort of like soulmates, we've always been incredibly close to each other, and I've always depended on her for so many things. And so I think if anything, that's just gotten stronger. Like how did you feel when you moved away at first? Was there somebody at home that you sort of was almost like your filter, and you felt like that relationship just grew? Because I felt like I just fell in love with my mum even more when I moved away. You don't sound Irish.
I need to make this clear. No part of me is Irish. I don't have Irish parents or grandparents or anything. I'm Italian. Well, my parents are anyway.
So what were you doing at an Irish dance? Don't the Italians have dances?
Yeah, and I wouldn't want to tell you the one. They behave like Italians all night.
What does that mean?
Oh, you know.
No.
Hands.
Too many of them?
I don't know. I guess it could seem that way if he was a girl. Listen. I want everything out in the open. I came to the Irish dance because I really like Irish girls.
And I was the only one who would dance with you.
Oh, no, it wasn't...
Oh, so you danced with loads of others?
I'm from quite a big family, so I'm one of four. Are you, how many are you, one of four?
One.
Oh, you're one.
Just me.
So I'm one of four, and we grew up in a very small house, actually, a tiny little terraced house in Reading, the town I grew up in, which is about an hour outside of London. My father was a struggling actor, always was a struggling actor, and my mum was at home. And so actually, when the time came to move away, I was really ready, actually, to have another experience out of life, and to be honest, had to have space, because I shared a bedroom with my older sister. She was wanting to be an actress, I was wanting to be an actress, so there were lots of dynamics at home which were, whilst they were great, there simply wasn't enough space for it all. And I moved away to London, and then very quickly actually started working. I did Heavenly Creatures with Peter Jackson when I was only 17.
When you were 17, and that was the first film that you did,
that
right?
was the first audition for a film I'd ever even had.
Oh my God.
So that was it was a huge turning point for me, and I look back on that experience, and it's not just that, what a stroke of luck to be in something that was so accomplished and critically applauded in the way that it was, but to have many boxes that I could tick in hindsight.
Yeah.
You know, working with someone like Peter Jackson, who then became Peter Jackson of Hobbit fame, and Fran Walsh, his co-writer, who I know you have also worked with, having written a brilliant screenplay, and to play those parts, myself and Melanie Linsky, we were cast in these wonderful roles, playing two women who had really existed, and the total immersion that was required of both of us to be able to pull that off is absolutely something that I have kept with me, that sense of preparation, commitment, professionalism that you have to have, and that level of focus just to get through any film shoot. It doesn't matter.
And
did
you feel like you brought that to jobs as well when you were playing Joanna, who obviously was another real life character, right?
Well, playing Joanna, you know,
quite a strong woman.
Yeah, playing Joanna Hoffman was it was an experience that I really wanted to have. You know,
Right.
it's a wonderful thing to be 40 years old, which I am now, and all of that stuff that you sort of bother about in your 20s and early 30s just kind of evaporates, and actually all you want really and truly is to work with lovely people and to be challenged as much as possible.
What's the stuff that evaporates?
The stuff that evaporates
younger?
is, what do I look like, what do people think?
Right.
That just literally goes away. And I also think that's to do with having children.
That's
That
what I was
stuff
gonna
just-
ask, yeah.
It just disappears.
Yeah.
And so playing Joanna Hoffman, for me, it wasn't just about the experience of playing a woman who had been so pivotal in the life of Steve Jobs, but playing someone who had left Poland at the age of 14, come to America to look for a whole other life for herself, and actually ended up training as an archaeologist. She was an archaeologist before she was hired by Steve Jobs' predecessor, a man named Jeff Raskin. And she suddenly was thrown in as head of marketing of the Macintosh. She was like,
Oh my
okay, I
God.
mean, I did that at college for a couple of semesters, okay. And so, and that was who she then became, and it became this huge part of her life. But playing Joanna was something just so different to me. Unlike you in Brooklyn, I don't know anyone like this person. It was absolutely
which is a
playing
treat
role.
to do. It's such a pleasure to play someone like that.
It really, really was.
Because you
It
can
was-
escape into it. You can, as you say,
Yeah.
just like with Heavenly Creatures as well. I mean, I hope you weren't like that when you were 17.
No, I definitely wasn't.
Didn't want to kill anyone's mother.
I don't think I was a lesbian murderess
No,
at the age of
not
17.
then.
No, not
Not
then.
at that time.
But now maybe.
But
you
it's
know.
changed,
Yeah.
you know.
But no, it was a huge luxury to play somebody who was absolutely nothing like me.
Yeah.
And also who I could spend time with. I mean, I spent a lot of time with Joanna Hoffman, not just hearing how she spoke, which was so important for the part.
Right.
But just getting a sense of what her relationship with Steve had really been about, because that's what people are fascinated in. What was he like? How did they function working with this man who was clearly a perfectionist of extreme proportion? And she just wasn't fazed by him. He was
No.
like a frat boy. He was just like, this Steve Jobs, who cares? Like,
Yeah.
She said, you know, I had been through a lot in my life, and this was not a big deal.
Yeah.
So just hearing that from her was tremendously useful. And also, I think in particular, hearing about the level of affection between the two of them, because there was genuine warmth, genuine love and respect.
Well, I guess he was able to be himself with her, right? Because
He
she
was,
was
yeah.
so kind of
But
honest
also-
about.
Yes, exactly. She wasn't a yes person.
No.
And I think that those people in Steve's life, or from what I could tell, were perhaps a little bit lacking. And it was an extraordinary relationship founded on mutual respect, I think. And their friendship lasted throughout Steve's life. And actually, it was quite hard for Joanna to talk about him. She found it was really emotional for her.
What
because
does she think of
misses
the
him.
film?
She likes it a lot.
Good.
Thank God.
And she approved of the accent and
Thank
everything.
God- thank
'Cause
God
for
she
me,
approved of
that's
the accent.
yeah, that's the biggest thing.
Playing
I know
someone
that's
who's
the first
Polish,
thing I think
Polish,
about.
Armenian, moved back to Poland. Some of her family spoke Russian, came to America as a 14-year-old. Hello, cut your head off. nightmare.
You don't think you're having a bizarre overreaction to a 19-year-old girl allowing her mother to list her own house?
She could have tried.
She's supposed to stop her mother, that particular mother, from living
She gave
wherever
Cassandra
the
her
hell
blessing to sell the house, and she did it despite me.
I don't care if she put a pipe bomb in the water heater. You're going to fix it now.
She's been acting weird for months. She's turned on me.
Fix it.
What the?
Fix it, Steve.
Take it easy.
Fix it, or I quit. How about that? I quit and you never see me again. How about that?
I know you've obviously played a lot of English characters as well, but accents is kind of something that we need to have in order to get jobs, basically.
So was it strange playing Ailish and really not having a dialect coach to turn to, having nobody, just you,
Well, this was the thing, is that I went into it and I said straight away, I'm not using my own accent. I've never used my own accent. The only time that I came close to that was on Grand Budapest, and it was sort of a milder version, because I've got like a Dublin accent, you know. And I come from all over the place as well. I mean, born in New York, grew up in the countryside, all my family are from Dublin. So I'm from nowhere and everywhere, you know. And she comes from Enniscorthy anyway, Ailish does. She comes from the countryside. It's very rural. But that town, again, another reason why it was so close to home to me, because it was literally close to home. Enniscorthy was 20 minutes away from where I grew up in Carlow. So suddenly we were shooting in this town with all of these people that I had, you know, crossed paths with over the years.
You really had known them.
Kids that were my age that, you know, I didn't really know that well, but I'd see them at sports days or art competitions, and all of a sudden, there's one shot of me, of Ailish, in the dance hall at the very start, and it's kind of, I suppose it's to kind of get the point across that she is leaving this world, that she's kind of slowly stepping back from this world. And so we did this one shot. It was a Steadicam shot on me, and I'm kind of observing this world that I'm not really a part of anymore. And when we did it, they didn't empty the dance hall. They didn't get anyone out of there. So I had my childhood staring at me while I was doing this close-up, and it was amazing. It was very overwhelming. It really was.
It must have been. And so the scene when you're back from New York and you're walking down the streets of that town and you've got your glasses on, you've done that.
I've done that since I was a kid, you know. But the accent was something that, and I'm sure it is for you as well, because you do accents so much and you're so good at them, but that is one of the first things that I think about. When I read a script, the first thing that comes into my head before the visuals or anything is, what is this person going to sound like? How are they going to speak? And
it's lovely to be able to. It's lovely to be able to attach yourself to that, to be able to do a thing, isn't it? It's always so comforting, because I think when it is literally just you, it's really scary.
It's you.
I mean, you might as well be walking onto set with no clothes on.
Yeah.
It's a terrifying feeling.
That's what it feels like, and it's very intimate, I think, you know, and I've always been so fascinated by it. I think because I was always surrounded by so many different accents and so many different sounds, I realised that your accent, in the best possible way, can really kind of define you, you know. With an Irish accent, we're very forward, we're kind of apologetic, everything's very melodic and up and down, and it really mirrors who we are as people. I think the English accent, for example, is kind of a little bit more reserved and a bit more levelled. The American accent is even more laid back. The Scottish accent's kind of a bit more defensive, you know what I mean? The Welsh is very soft and,
floaty,
you know, and it's so, and again, with the Polish accent that you have in Jobs, it's like, it's such a huge part of her character. That's what I was so fascinated by when I watched it.
Yeah, it is. It's a very big part of who she is. And the thing that was hard about it, to be honest, was that, you know, when you do an Eastern European accent on screen, you're only one step away from a fast show or a Saturday Night Live sketch. You know, because if you go too far in the wrong direction, it's just it can all go south.
Wrong.
And so my thing with Joanna was, you know, because it can be quite staccato. You know, when you do an accent like that, it can be really but Joanna, you know, she's been in America since she was a young girl, and she's learned how the rhythm is, and so those were the things that actually I really learned how to latch onto rhythm almost more than sounds, and that was something really new for me to almost realise, you know, at the ripe old age of 40 now, to suddenly go, wow, my God, I've been ignoring that part of doing accents all of these years, that actually the rhythm really is something that is almost more important than the specificity of it. So I was extremely young when I realised that I wanted to be an actress, but I have absolutely no idea how old you were. And did you have that moment of going, yep, I'll do that?
When I realised, or when I actually started? When I realised?
Both, because I know they're probably two separate things.
They are. So my dad is an actor as well, like yours, and we had moved back to Ireland. He was doing this short film, and they needed a kid. It was like a bizarre, weird art house film, and they needed a kid to dress up as a clown, of course. So he came to me and he asked me to do it, and it wasn't really something that I was keen to do straight away. You know, I wasn't really one of those kids that liked a lot of attention necessarily, but by the same token, my way of sort of surviving being an only child was to talk to myself a lot, and I kind of entertained myself by disappearing into a different world. So it was something that was always there, but I didn't know what that was. I didn't realise that that could translate into something like acting. And so I did it, and I remember I was on the set and there was this guy and he kept talking and talking and talking, and it was right before a take. I must have only been about 6 or 7, or it was maybe about 7. And I just turned around to him. He must have thought I was such a little brat. I turned around to him, I was like, shh, quiet on the set. He was like, Jesus, okay. And I felt like I adapted to being on a film set straight away. I didn't, you know, I did school plays and things like that, but it wasn't really necessarily a road I wanted to go down. I didn't think about it. I was a kid, you know. I wanted to be like a waitress when I was a kid, because I used to go into the living room and take my dad's order, and then I'd feed him like a plastic burger or, you know, something like that. And I think it was probably, I started to work then and go up for things and loved it, but it was by the time I got to Atonement, which was the 3rd film I had done. Again, like what you were saying, I think especially when you're a kid, to play someone who's completely different to you and have that escapism, that's almost it's kind of similar to pretending you're a wizard or, you know, a tree or a princess or whatever it is, to escape into this person, Bryony, who was in every way the polar opposite to me, was wonderful. And I suddenly realised that I don't think I could ever give up this feeling. You know,
amazing,
it was
that
so
feeling
magical.
Of, oh God, I can't go back.
Yeah.
It's an extraordinary
and
moment,
I don't
isn't it?
even know if you realise it necessarily when you're a kid, because you've got that uninhibited sense of expression, and there's no guilt attached to anything. There's no second guessing yourself. You just do it, and you just believe in the make-believe, and there's something so wonderful about that. And I think it was then, we had done a scene, it actually got cut out of the film, but it was with Ciara. And Bryony gets quite emotional, and, you know, she's prepared this play, and all of a sudden everything's kind of fallen apart, and so she rips up the poster in the hallway of the kind of gallery of the house. And Ciara's there, and she doesn't know what's wrong with the kid, you know, because they didn't really, I mean, in that sort of society as well, they didn't express anything at all or share anything. So this kid was like on her own, you know, completely on her own, and she only had her imagination to fall back on. And she just gives up on it all. And she rips the poster up, and she looks at her, and she's blaming her for all of this because she feels like it's her fault, and she storms out. And it was the first time I had to cry on screen properly. And the release that I got from it was just amazing. You know, it was really amazing. And it was at that point that that I knew I couldn't give it up, I have to say. What about you?
It's it is the best feeling in the whole wide world. So, well, I've had a similar moment to the one that you had of saying, shh, quiet on the set, with actually my own daughter, who, she actually had a small part in a film that I did a couple of years ago, but just a teeny tiny thing, but it was enough to make her already have that feeling of like, oh, I think I need more of this. But yeah, I was on set with her. She came to visit something I'd done when she was 8 or 9, and I was having a snack, you know, in between takes, and she went, Mummy, I really, really don't think that you should be eating on set. I was like,
oh my God.
Okay.
You're right. I'm so
actually,
sorry.
You really are right. Okay, back to work.
The guilt.
Terrible guilt. But no, for me, I remember really wanting to be cast as Mary in my school nativity when I was 5.
Yeah.
I remember
It's the dream role.
actively thinking it's either Mary or the Angel Gabriel. If they they give me the Angel Gabriel part, I'll still be okay about that. But
Such
really,
an arc for Mary,
but
do
it's
you know
really,
what I mean?
Mary, you know, Angel Gabriel just does kind of one thing. Like Mary, she goes on
He's
a
in and
proper
out.
full journey. I mean,
don't want
like,
that.
and clearly no one else can play the part but me. So I do remember having that feeling of not determination, but willing something to happen from inside. I remember feeling that very strongly. And then I had another moment, probably when I was maybe 6 or 7, and this is really the truth. I was in the bathroom and I could hear my mother in the kitchen. And again, I grew up in a tiny, small house in a tiny town. So, you know, paper thin walls, etc. You could hear what the neighbors were doing.
Right.
And I could hear my mum just rattling around the kitchen, just really going about cooking supper, and my sister came in from school and my brother was upstairs doing something, and just general sort of hustle and bustle of life. And I actively remember thinking, if someone put a camera in the kitchen and was filming my mum doing all this stuff, that would be exactly the same as if she was doing it in a film. But she's not acting, she's just being. And that was a moment when I went, okay, so actually then, there's no such thing as acting. It's being. It's all about being.
Yeah.
And that has really stayed with me.
Yeah.
And when younger actors who are auditioning and excited about a possible future career will say to me, have you got any advice? It's always a difficult one because I don't really have any massive advice at all, but my one thing I always say is don't act, be.
Yeah.
Because that's...
Give yourself up to it.
Exactly right. It is so much about, it isn't acting, it's being, and it's playing as well. Like, back to what you were saying before, it really is about playing and playing with the other actors and that level of collaboration and fun.
And that belief that you need to have. You need to have total and utter belief. And that was something I realised. I think every now and again when, you know, when you're doing press for films, you can kind of, because you have to overanalyze everything and you're over-explaining, you know, why we act and why we love acting and all that kind of stuff. You do sometimes end up actually learning something about yourself. And I remember years ago, when I was still a kid and I was doing press, and people would say, you know, why do you love acting so much? And it's such a big question. I thought, well, why do I love my mum and dad? I just do. It's just an unconditional thing and it's just a feeling. But I realised that the reason why something like acting and just filmmaking in general, but especially acting, is so wonderful is because, you know, if you really hold on to the essence of it, you're putting yourself back in that place that you were in when you were a kid, when you just completely surrendered to that feeling of being someone else and being somewhere else. And there's such a freedom that comes with that you don't want to give that up.
Yeah, it's true, and it's, you know, it's very important to remember that feeling of freedom.
Yeah.
And remember to forget that the camera's there. I mean, I constantly remind myself to forget that the camera's there.
Right.
And it's really only now that I think I'm getting better at it. You know,
Right.
It's hard. It's really hard to do that. But you must forget that it's there, because then you're aware of it. Then you become self-conscious. Then you think about how the camera is viewing you as opposed to just being really in those moments.
Thanks for watching Actors on Actors. Click to the left to watch our conversation with Paul Dano and Joseph Gordon-Levitt. Click to the right to watch our full conversation with Elizabeth Banks and Carey Mulligan. And don't forget to subscribe to Variety's channel.